know. All right, so Linnell, let me know if you see me, because I want to make sure that everything's on point. So you see me on Zoom. Someone else says that they see me. Okay, I was a little bit nervous. So, all right, perfect. All right, so I actually did not know that you filed bankruptcy. So I'm actually really, really excited that you shared that, because for one, a lot of people, especially who are attorneys, you don't hear that a lot, and you don't hear that relatability. And I also love the Elle Wood story, because a lot of our partners have actually filed bankruptcy on their own as well, because it is expensive. It's very expensive, actually. Let me go ahead, click on the YouTube. We're on YouTube. I think I just sent an email. Hopefully it's being recorded. Oh no, I see myself on YouTube. So
you're on Zoom and it's recording on this side. So I think
you guys know, I always like to make sure that when I promise you something, it is on point. Like it's a must. So what I'm going to do, let me go into the chat, and I'm actually going to just tell them to join me on Zoom. I mean, I would have loved, like, I see myself on here though, but I don't want to take things up. It says 11 people are watching me, so you guys must know me. Some people are seeing me, 33 comments. Okay, so I'm like 33. People do not know to go to your actual page. Okay, so let me share this, and then we should be able to go. I don't want them to lose anything, because they have them waiting for this Q&A. So I'm like, I don't want you guys to miss anything. So I'm so sorry for holding you guys up. This is why I typically do Facebook. But I have so many people who have left Facebook recently, and who are like, go on YouTube or go on TikTok. So I figured YouTube would be best. All right, so I sent the link on here. Hopefully everybody is able to come in now and actually able to see me, so that we are actually on point and ready to go. So I'll just keep clicking on that. So let's go ahead and get started. I know we had a lot of questions. Thank you again so much for sharing your story. I appreciate that. It's been well over a decade with you slaying those student loans. And yes, entrepreneurship is rough, period. And that's actually a lot of people who are entrepreneurs have actually been the one asking me about student loans, because they're not in the nonprofit organizations where they were qualified for the PSLF?
PSLF,
yeah. PSLF. They're not in that. They didn't qualify for some of the other programs, the most recent ones that Biden had. But we've actually had, we just hit 10 million people, $10 million forgiven, just based off of when like those mass forgiveness started happening. So I am super excited about those who were able to have it done, and super disappointed for those of us who not. But I'm glad you said that there are options out there, and that no one size fits all, which is yeah, that's pretty much the deal for everyone. So let me go ahead. I'm bringing up some of the questions that were most recent to ensure that we're all on point. But I'll let you go ahead and get started, because there's a new program that's out, and some of the people have been asking me why, basically what their next approach is, because we were so anxiously awaiting, I didn't qualify, but so anxiously awaiting for that forgiveness that was shut down. And now it's like, what next? It was almost like a panic, like, oh my God, I'm actually have to pay this back now. And there was almost this anxiousness, especially if those of us who've been paying on our student loans for like over a decade. So what their options are. So I would love to like give you the floor and let you discuss all of that good stuff.
All right, so I'll just start with, letting everyone know, like, do not panic and don't feel like you have to do anything right now, right? So first, I want to drive home the point of there's a program called the On-Ramp to Repayment, right? So that's essentially a grace period or forbearance that you will not face any consequences for late or missed payments until September 30th of 2024, right? So they're giving us a year to sort ourselves out because the government realizes people have not been paying for 3.5 years. Some people don't even know who their lender is, who their servicer is. They've never even made a student loan payment if you just came out of school. So, there's going to be you're going to need some time to adjust, and you need to figure out what's going on. So the first thing I encourage you to do is figure out who your lender is, who your servicer is. Make sure that your contact information is up to date, right? So if you have federal student loans, you need to log on to studentaid.gov. And when you log in, you should have a login and password. If you don't, you need to create one, because that is going to be your go-to where you are managing and maintaining your student loan debt account and knowing what's going on with it, right? So when you log into studentaid.gov, you will see your loan balance, the interest rate, who the servicer is, who the lender is, the contact information for you and the lender, right? So if you have like your old college address there, you need to update it. Otherwise, you're not going to get communications from the Department of Education or your servicer. Once you know who your servicer is, you need to log into the servicer's website, make sure your contact information and account information is accurate. One thing that people need to know is that a lot of the loans have changed servicers since the pandemic, because between 2020 and now, a lot of the servicers are no longer servicing federal student loans, right? So Fed Loan, for example, they used to service for public service loan forgiveness, and now it's Mohila. Navient left, and now it's Aidvantage or a handful of other servicers. So it's a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. Nobody knows who's who or what's what. So you need to sort out what's going on. So get yourself organized first and foremost.
So let me pause right there, because we did have a few people who mentioned that they don't even know if they're what's going on with their payments, because there's a lack of communication, there's long holding times. It has been a mess. And I've known, who's been following it has known that it's going to switch for a while, which means that these companies have known that they were going to get an influx of new borrowers who they were going to have to service. So I was a little shocked that it was going so bad.
It's going to be bad for a while. Like, even for me to get in touch with, get on the phone with one of the servicers, the hold times are 3 or 4 hours easily. Like, I'll just have it on in the background while I'm working, waiting to speak with someone. Right. And I'll always ask to speak to the supervisor. I'll say, I'm an attorney, I represent so-and-so, I need to get such and such information. But since even in September, like early September, the hold times were like obscene and ridiculous. So it's going to be like that for a while, because people weren't dealing with it, right? We were holding our breath to see what the Supreme Court was going to do. Although, even with that, even if they won the Supreme Court action, it was only $10,000 or $20,000, depending on the borrower. I see massive loan balances. I mean, I've seen over $1 million, and more than once, right? So, 10 or 20,000 wasn't going to solve the problem. It was going to help make it a little better. But I think that people didn't take action on their student loans because they were hopeful that something was going to happen. So they just kind of waited around until they were like, oh, wait, interest resumed in September. Oh, wait, my payment's due in October. I better figure this out. So everybody's scrambling at the same time. And the Department of Education doesn't have extra money to hire more people, right? So they're just dealing with whatever budget, whatever staff they have. And we're just going to sit, which is why they added the 12-month grace period. So, which is why I'm trying to drive home the point that don't panic. Don't feel like, oh my God, if I don't make my payment in October, it's going to be a blemish on my credit or anything like that.
That is a fair, and let me tell you why, because a lot of us have had these late payments on our credit reports before, and I've had so many of us, especially in the academy, my wealth creators, as well as who've taken some of my other classes or are just inside of the Prosperity Partners community, because they've finally gotten their credit on point. They've seen inflation go up, so some of our credit card balances are starting to go up, and now it's like now student loans are back into repayments. And now the servicers, it's not just the Department of Education, but the servicers as well are just, I mean, we were getting emails like crazy saying, hey, your payment's gonna, and then all of a sudden now we can't get a hold of anyone. And so I know that it usually takes about 90 days, but we don't want a late payment at all. It's like,
right.
So have you said anything about
there won't
that?
be any late payments until at least October 1st of 2024. Like that is
okay. Thank you for that.
Not
I'm
going
about to
to
clarify.
happen. Yeah. And if you guys go to studentaid.gov, you read the information about the on-ramp to repayment.
So that's good. Thank you so much for that. Cause that was the part I was kind of like, all right. Because once you get your credit on point, the last thing you want, especially when you're dealing with these prices, honey, these prices are ridiculous right now.
Right. And I mean, interest is still accruing, right? So that's the nerve-wracking part. Like, although you don't have to make a payment and, it's not going to be a blemish on your credit, but that interest is still growing since September 1st. So
yeah, the sucky part. Well, go ahead. I just want to pause on that part because that was one of the things that came up because, and then servicers are still switching. Like one of the people who are on YouTube right now mentioned that it just changed again for the second time to Nelnet. And now she's like, what the heck? And so is there some type of grace period when that happens, when you change over to another servicer? Is there some type of
right? So
onboarding, I guess?
Usually, okay, so for Fed Loan and Navient, they left the game and all those borrowers are being transferred to new servicers automatically, right? But sometimes something you do triggers it to be transferred to another servicer, right? So if you apply for public service loan forgiveness, whichever servicer you're with is going to have to transfer it to Mohila, right? Because right now Mohila is the one servicing for public service loan forgiveness program and applications, keeping track of payments, things like that. Nelnet is the one who services the processes the applications for disability discharge. So sometimes it's because of something you do. If you apply for a consolidation, you can choose a servicer. It'll go to whichever servicer you choose. So there are various reasons why the loan will change hands, if that makes sense.
Okay, so let me see who asked that question just so I can make sure that answered her question. Okay, that's define yourself. So define yourself. Let me know if that answered your question. She said, what was the name of the program that was just mentioned? Let me know what you mean, because we mentioned the public loan forgiveness program. We've mentioned different servicers being changed. And we also mentioned a few things. So kind of give me the context.
Is she referring to the SAVE?
We're going to talk about the SAVE program. If we talk about the SAVE program.
The loan. Somebody, I can see the chat a little bit, but I would prefer you kind of monitor the chat.
Sure, I can monitor the
tell
chat
me what. Yeah, I'm seeing the questions pop up, but I want to go in order and just be respectful.
Not a problem. So define yourself. Okay, yes, it is. She said the answer to her question, and she said the RAMP program.
On-ramp.
Okay.
Yes. So that's the one that's basically forbearance, right? Or grace period until September 30th of next year.
Okay, good stuff. And then we have one here. While on hold with Mahela, I heard something about if he works for a nonprofit, he can have his student loan forgiven. So that's a public.
Yes, that's the public service loan forgiveness.
Thank you, service.
So if you work for the government or a 501c3 nonprofit, because not all nonprofits are 501c3. So I want everyone to be clear on that. So you need to know whether or not your employer, if you're working for a nonprofit, if it's a 501c3. So if you are working full-time as an employee for 501c3 or any government, any branch of the government, federal, state, local, tribal, as long as your employer is a government or nonprofit, that means that you will qualify if you work more than 40 hours and you're on an income-driven repayment plan. There are a lot of things that need to be in place, right? So, check all the boxes. And it doesn't really matter what you do. It just matters who your employer is. Because a lot of people think they have to be like a nurse or a teacher or something along those lines to qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And that's not the case, right? You could be the lunch lady, the crossing guard, the janitor. If you work for a public school, then you can qualify for loan forgiveness. Another thing is that people think that if they work for a private school, that they don't qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And it depends on what type of entity the private school is. It could in fact be a 501c3 private school, right? And you can qualify because remember, the dictating factor is who the employer is, not what you do.
Okay, I love that. So since we are getting a lot of questions about public loan forgiveness, I guess we can start there. So I love that you gave us some analysis on how you qualify for it now. And I didn't know that it doesn't matter what position you hold in the knot. So I love that you pointed that out because I had no clue about that. Was there a particular loan agency just for those with PSLF, public service?
So it's MOHELA. They're the service for public service loan forgiveness, right? So once you apply for public service loan forgiveness, meaning like you put in your employment certification form or you call your servicer and say, I'm interested in applying for the public service loan forgiveness program, and you submit paperwork, they will transfer your loan to MOHELA and MOHELA will be your new servicer.
Okay, perfect. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. So I noticed that a lot of people on the public service loan forgiveness program are also in some type of, they're not on a standard plan. So they're typically on the income contingent repayment plan. I think it's IBR, income based repayment plan. And then now there was repay. And so I believe that's going away. And then there's extended. So I did have one person who wanted to know, she just started working for a nonprofit 2 years ago. So she's kind of wondering what should she do. She was doing a standard plan, can't afford it anymore. And she's kind of like in limbo of which plan she should go with. At the time, I just told her to use the loan simulator calculator until we got you on the line. But what are some things that people should be considering if they do qualify for forgiveness? Because remember before, especially when we were dealing with DeVoe, I think her name was something like that.
Betsy DeVoe,
yeah, it was a nightmare trying to get forgiveness. So now that we are here, where we actually have an administration that's actually pushing forgiveness and actually doing it, of course, people want to take advantage of it and make sure that they are in the right plan.
Right. So one of the things I caught about the scenario you were just describing was that the person was working for a nonprofit and interested in public service loan forgiveness, but on the standard repayment. That does not go together. So if you are pursuing public service loan forgiveness, you need to be on an income-driven repayment. That one of the plans, because remember, income-driven repayment is a broad term that describes several different income-driven repayment plans, right? So if you need to be on any one of them, right, and you need to make 120 payments, and they don't have to be consecutive, right? So if you make 120 consecutive payments, that's the equivalent of 10 years. But let's say you work for 5 years in a nonprofit, you leave, you work a couple years in the private sector, you want to come back, you can just pick up where you left off, as long as you have 120 qualifying payments. And let me describe what a qualifying payment is, and you need to, like, if you're taking notes, all the boxes need to be checked. So A, you need to be working full-time. B, for a nonprofit or government employer while making payments on an income-driven repayment plan.
Okay, repeat this. I want to make sure I write it down. So A, you have to what?
You have to be working full-time, and that's 30 hours or more a week, or whatever your employer defines as full-time. But it has to be a minimum of 30 hours. But if your employer has a different definition of full-time, that's more than 30 hours, you need to meet that requirement. So working full-time for a nonprofit or government entity, right? So 501c3 or government entity, while making payments on an income-driven repayment plan, and you need 120 payments total, and they don't need to be consecutive.
Okay, I didn't know that part. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Listen, I told you guys I haven't been in the student loan arena for like a while, so that's why I bring in.
and it keeps changing. It changes like overnight, literally. Like I have to stay on my toes because every day there's a new rule or, you know, something different, and what's going on today. Like it's madness, especially since we've been everybody's been in this little fantasy world for the last 3.5 years where student loans don't exist. And it's like we got the rug pulled out from under us, right? Like, oh snap, like now we have to figure out and make room in our budget for this loan payment.
Yes. I don't think you have to qualify for is it MOHELA? You are on the income-driven repayment plan, but Tricia, let me know if you qualify, because that's what we're talking about now, the PSLF. So let me know if you qualify that, and then I can kind of answer the question. Will they count extra payments towards the 120 payments? So if she made extra payments on her loan.
No, you can't fast track it. You have, like, the whole point of the public service loan forgiveness program was to encourage people to go into public service work and nonprofit work, right? So you can't just come in there and pay, here are my 120 payments and I'm out, you know, like they want to keep you working for a minimum of 10 years. So there's no like fast tracking it.
That's a good question, because I definitely, that's something I would have did. That's a great question. All right, so let me see if we have any more questions. Nicole says, I'm in a nonprofit and an ex-military and I'm still paying. Well, let me know if you've made the 120 payments. Now she says, I'm paying what I can, and I can't afford their payment plan. So Nicole, you mentioned an income driven. So what happens in that case? Even if you qualify for forgiveness, they said that, you know, this is how much we feel you should be able to pay, even if you're on an income driven repayment plan, but you still can't pay that. Like what the amount that they say that they think you should be able to pay is not feasible for you. What do you do in that case?
Right. So I just want to explain how the income driven repayment plan works, right? It's based on your income and your household size. They don't care that your kids go to private school and you need to go to the Bahamas every summer. Like they don't care about your expenses, your lifestyle. It's based strictly on your income, which, you know, that's your tax return is going to show proof of what you make and what your household size is, right? So people will say, well, they gave me this income driven payment plan and I can't afford that. But that's what they say you can afford. So if you can't afford it, you have to figure out another way. So, I mean, if it's less than the standard plan, because sometimes depending on how much you make, the income driven plan may be more than the standard plan. It depends on your loan balance. There are so many variables, right? So it's like making general statements is like, you can't just take a general statement and apply it to yourself. You have to figure out what your goals are, what your circumstances are, to understand like what would be best for you, right? So one of the things I always like to, point out is that it depending on what your circumstance or situation is, will determine how you approach the situation. If you know that you're struggling, living check to check, or barely making it, an income-driven repayment plan where your payment is $0 or $50, that may be beneficial to you. But knowing that the loan is going to be hanging around for at least 10 if you work in public service, but probably 20 or 25 years. If you have grad school loans, most likely 25 years. So you know it's going to hang over your head and you're going to deal with it for a decade or two, right? But your payments are going to be small and you're going to be able to keep on pushing through. But if you make a good amount of income and you can afford to make either the standard payment or double up on your payments to pay it off and get it out of your hair, please, by all means, get it out of your hair, right? And just be debt free sooner if that's feasible for you. But it's not feasible for everyone because sometimes you got to put gas in your car and put food on the table and you can't send it to Sally Mae. You need it for yourself, right? So I hope that makes sense because it's like you have to decide what's good for you, right? Because you could take the Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman approach, like pay off the debt, aggressively go after it, get rid of the debt. Like that's their philosophy, right? But it's like, well, if you do that and you can't pay your rent or your mortgage or, your kids' daycare, then being like, what's the point of being debt free if you can't even like maintain your basic necessities, right?
We make more money the Frugal CrediTnista method. So we find ways to make some more money on top of, budgeting and making sure our credit doesn't point all that. At some point, you just got to bring in some more income. So Patricia, please let me know if we answered your question. Okay, well, I'll say this. She said that she's on an income-driven repayment plan, but she actually retired in January. Will she still qualify even though she's now retired?
Oh boy.
That's like
because the thing is you have to submit your application while you're still employed full-time. If you've already retired, you're not a full-time employee in a public service, either government or nonprofit because you've already retired. You should have had this conversation or asked the question before you retired. So in my experience, you still have to be employed. You can't either retire, quit your job and say, oh, I worked 10 years in public service, so I'm going to apply for this program. You have to still be a full-time employee in public service when you submit your application.
So let me know.
You may be able to appeal or do something like, plead your case, but it's not going to be easy. I'll tell you that. Sorry.
Let me know if you need to talk your situation, Patricia, especially since you're in a Zoom room, and we can see if we can get more information, or you can just type it out. I just want to make sure that we give you everything again. I know you asked for a website too, so I want to make sure that we got your question answered. Let's see. I'm going to talk about student loan, Parent Plus loans in a little bit. I saw a question on that. And Trina, she already mentioned that if you work for the government, that's one of the qualifying conditions. She said she heard that the school that she attended had lost accreditation. What would that mean for student loans? Accreditation, I've never had that forgiveness for loss of accreditation. It's usually if it was fraud or why they lost accreditation.
If it's fraud or if the school closed, like if they shut the school down, and it can't be like you left 10 years ago and they shut the school down. It has to be within 18 months of the school closing that you were actually enrolled there. So loss of accreditation does not qualify unless there was fraud or misrepresentation. So that is where the borrower defense to repayment would come in.
All right, good question. So let me get to Roll Johnson. Let me know if your question was answered. So I know that we got dinged for not making a payment. However, since interest is accruing, is our score going to suffer because the balance is growing? That's a good question. Well, as most of you know, your amount owed category does look at loans, not just utilization on your credit card. So it's going to look at the original amount that you took out and then what your balance is now. So for a lot of us, we're already like this, right? Because interest compounds the way it does. That's why I would say, like, try to make sure we're earning the interest instead of interest being applied to these balances and these credit card balances. So yeah, but it's not going to be like a credit card. Loans are a little bit different in that as long as it says paid as agreed and you're meeting that standard, that topsy-turviness of the balance isn't going to be as bad as if you had like a maxed out credit card, because credit cards are scored more harshly than loans when it comes to utilization. So you're definitely going to see it. I saw it on some loans for a while before I started aggressively paying them off, or being blessed to be able to aggressively paying them off. But like I said, it's not something that's going to like completely annihilate your scores, but you may get to a point in your growth where you're going to kind of see some stagnation, or it's going to kind of be going up and down, within a 5-point range, but it's not going to be anything that's going to hinder you from, dropping your scores 50 points or anything like that, or preventing you from, hitting like upper 700s or something like that. So let me know if that answers your questions. I appreciate that this is live. Well, yes. I mean, I'm not that good at, trying to go from Zoom to all these social media places, but when I say I'm gonna go live, I go live. Usually we're just on Zoom, and I've been kind of rocking out with the Academy, my wealth creators, but I was like, let me try to go on YouTube. So I appreciate you guys for your patience as I, try to see why Zoom is not connected to the other links. So I appreciate you guys for rocking out and being understanding. I love that about my partners. Thank you guys so much for that. They say that you don't qualify for an income-driven plan because your income is too high. I mean, you just pretty much addressed that, right? It's based on your income. So it's not probably that you don't qualify for the plan. It's probably you didn't get the $0 or probably a low plan, because I've seen people who make a pretty decent amount of money not go with the income-based plan or even a save, instead did extend it just because the payments were a little bit lower on that plan. So I don't know if you want to shed more light on that, but that's something that I've personally seen.
So maybe now is a good time for me to explain how they calculate the income-driven repayment plan, because that's a mystery to a lot of people. I'm going to crunch some numbers with you and break it down for you.
Perfect. Tremaine, this is for you. She literally just asked this. So Tremaine, this is for you.
Right. So I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Let me just pull up this one. Let me just make sure. Can you guys see that? Hold on. Actually, I want to be sharing this. Sorry. Can you guys see that now?
All right, Zoom room, I know we're good. And let me check. It looks like we're good on YouTube. There's a slight delay, but you guys let me know if you can't see the screen, because I see it on my end.
Right. Do you see the IDR monthly example? Is that what you see? Yep. Okay. All right. So this is an example under repay, the revised pay as you earn, right? So the same concept applies to if you're on, IBR, ICR. So the way they figure it out is the same, right? So until July, the repay is now automatically, if you're already enrolled in repay, you're automatically going to be on save, which is the saving on a valuable education, right? So if you have a $40,000 salary, this is just an example of one person on a $40,000 salary. right? So what they're going to do is deduct 150% of the federal poverty line. So in this case, it's $21,870. And then what's left over is what they call your discretionary income, right? So because this is an example on revised pay as you earn, you're going to be paying 10% of your discretionary income, right? So that number is divided into 12 months, 12 payments, and that payment is $151.
The question before you change the screen. So the poverty line amount is based on how many people are in your household. Are they only going by your taxes? Because some people have additional kids that maybe the spouse pays for, they care for parents.
No, they don't go strictly by the taxes. Like the taxes will be used to verify your income, but you can put the household, you can add additional household members if you're responsible for more than 50% of their care, right? So like if your parents live with you.
Family. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so family members who live with you, but not roommates, right? So if you have a roommate who's taking care of themselves and you're not taking care of them or providing them with free housing, then you cannot claim your roommate. But if your mom and dad live with you and they don't pay you rent, then you can add them to your household size, even though you don't necessarily claim them on your taxes as dependents. As long as they physically reside there and get mail there, then you're fine. Oh, sorry, they're testing the fire alarm here, so forgive me. It's going to be brief. Are you guys good? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We understand.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, and I just want to show the chart for the poverty guidelines. You can just Google this and find the numbers, and you plug in the numbers based on your household size, right? And then keep in mind that for the SAVE plan, they're going to be increasing the amount of income they let you deduct. They're going to use 225% of the federal poverty guideline, right? So that's going to help you save money and put more money in your pockets by lowering the payment, right? So if you are on revised pay as you earn, then automatically you're going to be on the SAVE plan, right? Because essentially it's just a revised pay as you earn, but they didn't want to name it that, right? So they came up with a new name, but that's essentially what it is, right? So it's the saving on a valuable education. So starting in July of 2024, instead of 10% of your discretionary income, it's going to be 5% of your discretionary income. So that's going to reduce your payments to half. But keep in mind, if you have grad school loans, it's going to be 10% of your discretionary income. If you have a mix of both, it's going to be a weighted average, right, between your undergrad and your grad school loans. I don't want to complicate it too much, but that's essentially like a breakdown of income-driven repayment, and then, repay and save. So, any other questions?
Let me know if you guys have questions on that. And Amy, since you are living with your parents, your household size will be just you.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't be like since you're not, as she mentioned, you're not taking care of them.
Right.
As loan services have changed, how can we easily determine if 120 payments have been made yet? And if your servicer changes, how do you know your complete payment record is being?
Right. So your main resource is studentaid.gov. That's where all the information about your federal student loans is housed, regardless of which servicer you have or how many times it changes servicers. The information in studentaid.gov is going to be accurate, or 99% accurate. So that's where you would go to see how many qualifying payments you have, your payment history, the loan status, everything. Who your current servicer is. Like if you have no idea who your servicer is, then you go to studentaid.gov, you will see it there.
Perfect. So that's a good question. Since loans were deferred during COVID, if you have PSL left, is the time that loans were deferred going to be credited towards your 120 payments?
Yes.
Are they going to give you? They are. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
So that is a gift. Like a lot of people are having like 36 months of like freebie, basically a gift of, out of the 120, 36 of them you didn't actually have to pay.
Love it. That's good stuff. All right, Rose said I was on a repayment plan, probably income-based repayment plan, I think you're meaning, Ro, and now they moved you back to standard. So you have to reapply, yes, and make sure that you qualify. They usually send you communication. And so this is a time. Remember, I shouldn't say remember. I know those who, if you're a wealth creator, you know this, but if you have taken Boss Up Your Budget with me or any type of budget training, I always say, have a separate email just for your financials, because otherwise all those notifications that comes from places like this and your credit cards and anything else that's important is going to get lost with all of the other stuff. So if you have not yet, I would love for you to just go to Gmail, Yahoo, whatever. I personally like Gmail, and make you I call it like your household accounting department. And literally all of your financials, you're going to change it to that email address. And then you're going to schedule to check it to make sure that you don't miss anything. You can create folders for everything. And it's just an easier way for you to be organized with your finances and move your important financial stuff away from all of the other emails that you may get on anything and everything. So if you haven't done that, I mean, definitely do that. But they send you a lot of emails to let you know that it's time to renew. If you have signed up for any type of text notifications or anything like that, they'll do that too. Depending on who your servicer are. I know my servicer definitely messages me. So yeah, definitely reapply. And Gina said her loan is a DLUCNS. Where did you get that, Gina? Did you get it from studentaid.gov? Have you heard of that, Natalie? Is it a federal loan?
No, that does not sound familiar at all.
No. I don't think it's a federal loan. Maybe you got some type of funding from maybe a state. A lot of state-based loans are sometimes listed. In which case it wouldn't fall under the Department of Ed. Tremaine let me know if that discretion, the information on the income was good for you. And I read that past forbearance could possibly count towards payment. Is there an update on that? I haven't heard of that.
That's a great question, actually, because there's something called the one-time IDR adjustment, right? So the government decided to go back, especially for the older loans, loans that have been in repayment for 10 or 20 years, and give people credit for any time in deferment or forbearance, because they needed to address the problem of what they call forbearance steering, right? So when people would call their servicer and say, I can't afford my payment, can you help me with a lower payment? Rather than educating them on income-driven repayment and where they would possibly qualify for a zero or very low payment, they would just give them a forbearance, right? So for those 3 years, the interest was continuing to accrue and they weren't getting credit for that time. Right? I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Like the fire safety director does not like me today. So, but rather than, doing the right thing, first of all, the servicers, some of them just didn't know what they were doing, right? It's like the blind leading the blind. And some of them were intentionally forbearance steering because it makes them more money, right? The more interest that accrues, the loan balances grow, and they make more money and they don't care about the little guy, right? So the government is giving you credit for any time, and this is automatic. They're going back and reviewing accounts and giving you credit for any time spent in forbearance. So like if you were in forbearance for 3 years, you're going to get 3 years of credit towards any type of loan forgiveness. So either if you're in public service loan forgiveness or just heading for the 20-year or 25-year loan forgiveness, then you'll get credit for that time.
Love it. They're coming up with some good stuff in this administration. Okay. You don't get everything, but at least you're getting something that we didn't have before. So that was a great question. Thanks for asking that. Patricia said she's the one that retired. She said she got into the program years ago. They've already sent her payment starting October. Her question was that she's in the program. Will she continue to be in the program now that she's retired? She only has 34 payments left of the 120.
Right, but she's gonna have to recertify her income every year as normal. So even though you're retired, you still have to certify your income, and then then you'll get a new payment depending on if your income goes up or down. Because remember, they adjust your payment every year, and then you'll continue to make those payments until you reach 120. But wait, hold on.
She's retired
though. You can't get public service loan forgiveness while you're in retirement. You have to still be employed full time. So you just have to decide, well, you're already retired, so you can't unretire yourself. But if you want to get, I guess, another job full time working, you have to decide what makes more sense. If you're making income driven payments based on your retirement income, and then heading towards forgiveness, because then you could qualify for forgiveness after 20 years of payments, instead of 10 for public service loan forgiveness. It just depends. I think I would need to know more to really properly advise on like the next best step,
Okay, thank you for that. So if you're on an income-driven plan, will your payments increase as your income increases? Yeah, because you have to recertify every year, but don't let that stop you from increasing your income.
Right.
Definitely make more money. My husband retired last year and his income dropped. Are you saying that my payment will be based on our income together? Should we file taxes separately next year? We usually do joint.
So that depends on what income or what payment plan you're on, right? Because not all of them, some of them allow you to file separately and exclude your spouse's income. And some of them, regardless of if you file separately, you'll still have to account for your spouse's income. So I would need to know which plan you're on, and like, it depends, right? Like the money that you're going to save by filing separately, depending on your tax situation, you might lose some benefits of filing jointly. It's a complicated, very like nuanced question that I would need to know all the particulars. And even then, I may refer you to your tax guide to see what is more beneficial, filing separately or jointly, just to save some money on your student loan, but then you'll pay more in taxes. So you have to weigh it out.
All right, let me know if that answered your question. Let me see what else is going on.
I'm going to stop the screen share. If I need to go back to it, I'll go back, but for now.
Janice, she was saying that 36 months that we were in, we had a stop, basically we weren't paying on our student loans. They're going to include that in the 120 payments. So that's what she was saying for the public service loan forgiveness.
Right. But that's if you were working full-time in public service during that time, right? Like, you can't get a new job in public service and say, oh, remember those 36 months during COVID? Like it's not retro, like you would have already had to been employed full-time in public service.
Nadine did ask to see the IDR slide again.
Oh, okay.
That's okay.
The formula, you mean? Like, yeah, so hold on.
Let me know, Nadine. So how do you check to see if you received credit? So we got Linnell, so thank you for that. And Janice, we answered your questions about that. So, all right, we are rocking and rolling. Thank you so much. Everybody say thank you to the student loan debt.
So can y'all see this slide? Y'all can maybe screenshot it or something. Or I can always send it to you, Nativa, and then you can forward it.
I can put it, I can send it in tomorrow's Frugal Mail email that's going out tomorrow.
Okay.
And I guess I can put it in the group too. I put in a, yeah. So hopefully you guys are at least on the email list, or you're inside of the Facebook group, or you are a wealth creator, because those are the three places that I can easily zip it to you guys. Let me see. How does it work if my employer is offering repayments?
Oh, well, that's unique to your employer situation, because sometimes there are different employers offering incentives, to get people to come work for them, like different programs that, they're agreeing to pay a certain amount of student loans for a certain number of years or a certain specific amount. So that would be based on whatever terms that your employer is offering. But that would have nothing to do with public service loan forgiveness or any of the government programs.
Okay. And Gina said that she printed her statement from Mohila, and it shows $0 for monthly amount, 0 for amount due, but it shows her balance though. So she's wondering how she should send in payment for that.
Right. Well, it sounds like she has a $0 payment, a
Right.
monthly payment. It must be on an income driven, and she qualifies for a $0 payment. So if you have a $0 payment, you don't need to do anything, but you just need to keep track of your recertification date so that you recertify in time, right? So that you're submitting your income documents, and depending on what your income and your household size is for that next recertification period, your payments would go up, right? If your circumstances changed.
All right, and let me just put a few more, because I saw some about a Parent Plus loan, so let me get that one last. I'm on partial disability. Is there a way I can get my student loan discharge?
No, to get it discharged, you need to be totally and permanently disabled and have documentation from your doctor, or if the VA or Social Security award letter, something showing that it's total and permanent. It can't just be partial.
All right, see a couple of people asking how to know if the forbearance is going to happen or be applied. And I believe you mentioned that they're going to go back and do that automatically. It's nothing we can do to like speed that up, right?
Nothing to speed that up. And it's probably going to take a while, right? So just be patient.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, you can check how many, like you can go into your studentaid.gov account, look at how many years you've been in repayment, like kind of do the math yourself to see if potentially you're eligible for forgiveness. So basically, if you reach that 240 mark, or whatever payment plan you're on, if you're in public service loan forgiveness, the magic number is 120. If you work a regular, private sector job, the magic number is either going to be 240 or 300, right? And I'm just talking to the OGs who graduated 20, 30 years ago, like myself, right? Like we graduated a long time ago. We've been making payments for 20, 25 years. So you can do the math in your head to see, well, if I was in forbearance for 3 years, but I made payments for 17 years, I'm about to get this one-time account adjustment and get my loans, for the balance of my loans forgiven.
Now, let me clarify something, because I see somebody said that there should have been forgiven. Another person said they, had loans since the 90s. They have to be Department of Ed loans, right?
Yes, Department of Education, yes.
A lot of us that are commenting, you guys probably still have, we call them FELP, but I see here people just call them FEL.
Or like, because it's the Federal Family Education Loan Program. So we call them FEL or FELP for short, or FFEL. So those, if you want to take advantage of the one-time account adjustment, you need to consolidate before December 31st. So if you think you might be eligible for this one-time account adjustment, it's imperative that you get your FELP out of FELP and get it into a direct loan. And you do that by applying for a direct consolidation loan, right? Because if you have an FFEL loan, you're not going to get that one-time account adjustment, even if you've been making payments for 30 years.
Wow. So at what point should you say, no, I shouldn't refinance
It's
or
not a
consolidate?
refi.
It's consolidate. I'm sorry, it's consolidate
Consolidate.
into Department of Ed. At one point, should you say I should keep my FFELP loans? And at one point, should you say, yeah, I
You should never,
definitely.
there's no reason unless you know that the FFELP loans are about to be paid off and it's not worth the hassle of submitting a consolidation application and waiting. Because remember, it takes 60 days to process that. And then, things are a mess right now. So it's going to take a while before you see results. So if you're like almost at the finish line with your FFELP loans, like you have a couple hundred or a couple thousand left and you could easily pay it, before the end of the year, then go ahead and do that. But if you know that you have a significant balance and you want to go through the process, submit the application, if you think you might be eligible for the one-time account. I mean, in general, I think it's a good idea to get a direct loan versus an FFEL loan, because remember, direct loans were the only ones who had zero interest during the pandemic, right? Because interest was still accruing on the other types of loans. So they're just not as beneficial overall. Even the public service loan forgiveness program, you have to have a direct loan. If you have an FFEL loan, although they're not giving them out anymore, right? They're not giving those types of loans out. But a lot of people who went to school in the 90s and the early 2000s have those types of loans. And they're very problematic, right? Because you're not getting all the benefits that the government is offering, and it's still like this federal student loan, right? That has no statute of limitations, meaning like if it was a private debt, depending on what state you live in, they can't collect on it past a certain time. But federal student loans have no statute of limitations, right? So that means it's forever, right? Until you pay it or get it forgiven, they can come after you. They can garnish your Social Security, any type of benefit you're getting until you die, basically.
Well, that's daunting.
I know, it's insane.
Until
it's
you
insane. Like you're signing up for something of this magnitude, usually when you're 17 or 18 years old. And they don't tell you this when you sign up. Like, oh, this has no statute of limitations. So you're going to have to deal with it until you pay it off or die, right? Like, and I mean, just so to put it in perspective, the other actions that have no statute of limitations are murder, treason, environmental crimes, and student loans. So like, how insane is that?
Okay, so to the person who asked in the Q&A, you said you owe about 50K. I think she answered your question. So it may be beneficial for you to go ahead and refi. Not refi. Stop saying refi, Nativa. Consolidate.
Consolidate. Okay, while we are on the subject of refinance.
Okay.
Like, I just want to, caution people against refinancing, right? Just to save a couple $100 a month. So many people I know, either personally, former clients of mine, refinance before the pandemic. Like nobody could have predicted the pandemic, right? Like that was such a foreign concept to us that there would be this global pandemic and we can't leave our houses and all the craziness that ensued after that, right? So people took their federal loans and refinanced them. So once you refinance it, it's now a private loan. So all of the benefits of no payment, zero interest, you lost out on that if you refinance with a private company, right? So if President Biden wakes up tomorrow and with a stroke of a pen decides, okay, all student loans are going away forever, or does some other kind of magic trick, if you refinance with SoFi, Earnest, Citizens Bank, all these people who are marketing to you to refinance your student loan with them, you have lost out. So my advice is, if it's a federal student loan, do not refinance it with any private company. If it's a private loan with crappy terms, then fine, refinance it for better terms. But do not take a federal loan and turn it into a private loan. That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make.
Right, here's a question for Kim. I'm a paid employee of my own nonprofit. My months are accumulating, but I'm also in the SAVE program with $0. And my borrower's defense has been pending since last fall. My question is, will my interest on my balance keep accumulating? And if so, am I better off canceling the forbearance and staying on the SAVE program, SAVE plan for $0 a month?
That's such a long, convoluted question. Okay, let's break it down into just little bitty parts. Sorry, you kind of lost me there because it was
Okay, let's take it step by step.
step by
So
step.
she's
Yes.
employee of her own nonprofit. She is on the SAVE program, $0 a month, and her borrower's defense is pending. So right now, the interest on her balance is accumulating and she's on forbearance. So she's wondering if she should cancel forbearance and just stick with the SAVE program since it's $0 a month. Let me know if I got that right, Kimberly.
Okay. All right. So it sounds, so if she's on the SAVE plan, don't worry about the interest, and her payment is in fact $0, so that it will be deemed as paid on time. So if you're on the SAVE plan and it's paid on time, that means that any interest that's unpaid is going to be taken care of. Basically, it's fully subsidized by the government, 100% subsidy on unpaid interest on the SAVE plan.
Perfect. One more question is, waiting on my employer to give me the paperwork for the PSLF program, but I got a bill from Nelnet with an amount to pay. While I'm going through the PSLF process, to get an IDR, income driven repayment plan, should I make the payment coming up, and would it count towards my PSLF 120 months?
Right. So yeah, you should, or you can make the payment. You don't have to, right? Because you have the advantage of the on-ramp period. But like if you do make the payment, then at least any interest will be subsidized. So while you're waiting for it to, because I'm not sure what's going on and why it's with Nelnet, but if you have submitted the employer certification form, well, it may take a while for it to transfer to MOHELA. Just keep in mind, like, you're not an official PSLF applicant, or they're not even looking at applying your payments until you are with MOHELA, right? So if you're with another servicer, that means like you are just, you know, just starting out or just exploring that option.
Okay. And does a late payment restart the 120 payments? How are late payments viewed? Well, you said it doesn't have to be consecutive.
Right. So the rules for late payment, if it's more than 15 days late, it won't be a qualifying payment. It'll still be applied towards your loan balance, but it's not going to count as one of the 120 payments. So
so if you pay it late, they're not going to include it because it's not considered a qualifying payment.
Exactly. But it's still a payment, right? But it's just not a qualifying payment.
That's cheap.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
if it's
something else.
Yeah.
All right, Latoya said, how does this affect current students? I have loans from years ago in my 20s, decided to go back, and I'm still currently enrolled in nursing school. Are you still making payments? So it doesn't, like, if we're approved, let's say for PSLF, and then you go back to school and you're accruing new loans, how does that work?
Right, so you're accruing new loans. It's not, that is another balance that you're not making payments on, right? But if you're making payments on an old loan while employed full-time with public service, they're not going to roll in your new loans with the old loans. Like, I mean, yeah, it's complicated. So but essentially the new loans that you're currently incurring, you're going to have to deal with that after you finish your program.
Okay, so a lot of you are asking, how do you know if you have private or federal? If you have federal, it'll be on studentaid.gov, even if it's like the older FFELP loans that we were talking about. if it's private, you're going to be receiving communication from a private servicer. And sometimes it can be confusing because some of like when Navient and Sally Mae were still doing loans, they also had private ones as well.
Right.
And
So,
you'll know on studentaid.gov though. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So yeah, just a quick good way to know what's federal, what's private is that you go to studentaid.gov, you pull your report, look at your loans, then you pull your credit report, and anything that's on your credit report but not on studentaid.gov is a private loan, right? So let's say you have 5 accounts with the federal government, and then you have 7 student loans accounts on your credit report. That means 2 of those accounts are private. So you just do a line by line, like, and you see, oh, okay, these 2 loans must be private because they're not showing up, because all of your federal student loans will show up on studentaid.gov. And if you go to studentaid.gov, you try to create a login and there's nothing there, that means you do not have any federal student loans. Like if you put in your identifying information, your date of birth, social, and nothing comes up, that means all your loans are private.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, actually more than a couple, about Parent Plus loans and forgiveness and what their options are and all of that good stuff. So let's get going on that. That was like one of the last questions that I haven't touched on or that we haven't touched on tonight. So let's get going. So Parent Plus loans, let me actually scroll up and look in the Q&A on Zoom too. Let's see. While I'm looking up those questions, let me get Tanya's in. Is a SAVE plan a good idea? I'm currently on an income contingent repayment plan and the PSLF program through Mohila. So while you're doing that, I'll gather the questions on Parent Plus.
Okay. Well, I mean, my question is, why are you on the ICR plan and not on repay or I mean, repay/save, because repay automatically turned into save. Repay no longer exists, just so you guys know. So the fact that you're on ICR leads me to believe that you have Parent Plus loans or some other type of unique loan that does not qualify for repay. So if you do qualify for SAVE, I encourage you to look into that because ICR is usually 20% of your discretionary income, while repay or SAVE is 10%. And then starting next year, it's going to be 5% of your discretionary income. So I don't see why you would be on ICR if you had a choice. So I'm confused as to why you're on ICR in the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program.
All right, so give us more context on that. Before we go on, I actually misstated Latoya's question. She said she's not asking about the PSLF. She's referring to the new student loan process altogether. Does she need to start trying to sign up for a plan and be making payments while enrolled in school? So you haven't graduated yet. So if you haven't graduated yet, then 6 months after you graduate, your school should be giving you exit consultations that kind of goes over your plan, your options, I should say, what you owe and all of that good stuff. And then after that, you have like a 6-month grace period. And during that 6 months, I'm definitely going to be putting Natalie's information on here. And I know she has like classes and all of this stuff coming up. Like stay plugged in so that you can have this information available. But you can also call and ask. But for now, you have that 6-month grace period after you graduate or even stop attending school. So definitely take advantage of that instead of trying to pay now. I mean, you definitely can be making payments on it. There's nothing wrong with that while you're in school, but it wouldn't be like as part of a repayment plan because you're not in repayment yet. It would just be you paying on your loans. And that's one of the reasons I think Latoya has been rocking with me for a while, but I don't know if you remember previously, but I would say that I wouldn't take any of they used to call it student loan refund checks. They were not refund checks. That's the excess money from your loans and I would give it back. So it would be less money that I would have to borrow. And I am one of those 6-figure student loan folks. Okay. So when I broke through, I was so happy when I finally broke through the 6 figures. I was like, oh, listen, to have all of that on you is ridiculous. So I would, definitely make sure that you're not taking advantage too much of those student loan quote unquote excess fund checks, and that you can still log in and see how much you've borrowed thus far. And how do you view voluntary payments while you're in school? I mean,
for me, I think it is a good idea to try to get ahead of it, but also keep in mind, like, you should have at least 3 months of like savings, like, just so if you're getting ahead on your student loans, but you don't have 3 months of rent put away, then that's not good, right? So if you can comfortably start making those payments while you're in school to avoid the interest, then by all means, but don't shoot yourself in the foot trying to do it either. So.
Right. Now you said Nelnet is over whom? They're not over PSLF, right?
No, Mohila is PSLF.
Right. So that's their question.
Nelnet, they process the disability discharge.
Okay, that's what it was, disability.
Right.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me get to my Parent Plus folks. All right, they are like, are there any options for us? Like, is there forgiveness? What can help? Another person mentioned that they were unemployed and can't make the payment right now. So what are options when you can't make the payment? Are there any forgiveness options? What are options for people who have Parent Plus loans?
Right. So for Parent Plus loans, the income-driven repayment plans are not as attractive. Basically, ICR is the only income-driven repayment. So it's called income contingent repayment. And like I mentioned earlier, they're taking 20% of your discretionary income, which is, of course, a lot more than any of the other income-driven repayments. You could potentially qualify for public service loan forgiveness, right? But you would be doing it through ICR, and you're paying a lot more on it, right? So, yeah, essentially, you can get forgiveness, but it would still be under a repayment plan that is not as attractive. Like, it's not eligible for save either, or repay. So there is a loophole where you can consolidate into a direct loan and then consolidate that loan. You would have to do it what they call a double consolidation, right? So you consolidate the Parent Plus loan, or with another, you have to have at least one other loan with it. Then you consolidate again. Like, that's a way to try to get around it. It's a little convoluted and complicated, but if you have a specific question and you want to, potentially pursue that, then just, message me, DM me, email me, call me, and I'll walk you through that process. But what else can I say about Parent Plus loans? Gosh, I mean, they suck. Like, that's all. Like, I wish I had a better answer for you for Parent Plus loan, but it's one of the ones that are just more difficult to deal with, right? So I don't know if anyone has like a specific question regarding, like, it rather than just like a broad overview, but.
Yeah, that's kind of the same situation as always been with these Parent Plus loans. Unfortunate. It is like,
oh, so while we're on the subject of difficult and, impossible to get out of situations, I would be remiss if I didn't touch on what it takes to discharge a student loan in bankruptcy, because it's not as impossible or hard as people would think, right?
I love it. Okay, you gotta take the screen off of this because we gotta look at you.
Okay, yeah, let me stop the screen share. Oh, I didn't even realize I was still sharing. But so just, and you can look into this further, Google it, do your own research, right? So there are three things that the court looks at when they're evaluating whether or not student loan debt is dischargeable in bankruptcy, right? So it's called the undue hardship test. So the first thing is, can you maintain what they call a minimal standard of living for yourself while you're repaying the loan? So in the eyes of the law, minimal standard of living means that you have a roof over your head, you have food on the table, you can keep your lights on, you have clothes to wear, you can pay for your medical and dental, transportation, you can put gas in your car to go to work, things like that, right? It does not include vacations, spa days, Jay-Z and Beyonce tickets. Like, it doesn't include that. Like, so they look at your monthly budget for whatever is necessary for your survival. If your minimum monthly payment on your student loan debt is more than what you have left over after you've covered your necessary expenses, then you satisfy the first part of the test, all right? The second is, are your circumstances likely to persist for a substantial period of time, right? Like, is it a temporary setback, like, oh, I broke my leg and I can't work for 3 weeks or 3 months? Or is it something like you're dealing with a chronic illness, chronic injury, you have a sick child, a sick parent, you have circumstances in your life that are impacting your ability to work or make more money? Or, your degree, the degree you got is useless and nobody will take you seriously with the degree, or whatever the circumstances are. There are some additional circumstances that make your case more compelling for whatever reason. So that's 2. And then 3 is good faith. Did you make a good faith effort to repay the loan? And that doesn't mean that you actually even had to have ever made a payment. But if the loan came due, did you request a forbearance or deferment? That's a demonstration of good faith. Did you try to work out a payment plan? Did you look into, student debt relief? If you can show, like, oh, I contacted this company, they said they were going to help me. Whatever proof you have that you wanted to make good on this debt and you're trying your best, right? You're looking for jobs. You're saving money and being economical. You're not just out here, either like sitting on your couch eating bonbons and not looking for work. So essentially demonstrating good faith. So those 3 things, if you can show them, to the court, demonstrate them on paper or whatever. And it's become a lot easier because the Department of Justice has just recently, it's been less than a year since they came out with new guidelines that make it a whole lot easier. It doesn't have to go to a whole full litigation. It's essentially a form that you fill out under oath that these are your economic circumstances, these are your circumstances, and they evaluate it based on the form and they decide whether or not you'll get a discharge. Boom, easy peasy. So you don't have to do 10 years, 20 years. That's like a prison sentence. Like, these loan forgiveness programs are ridiculous to me, in my opinion. But I mean, like I said, it's not one size fits all. But if that works for you, 20, 25 years, you're doing your bid, you pay 20 for 20, 25 years, fine. But yeah, I'm just saying, bankruptcy is not a dirty word. It's really something that, especially in our community, people don't take advantage of because they don't understand how it works. They think it's like the movies, like they're going to come to your house and take your couch out of your house. Like, it doesn't work that way, because bankruptcy allows you to keep your home. Like, there's a homestead exemption. And if you live in Florida or Texas, that homestead exemption is unlimited. You could have $1 million house, a $5 million house, and still claim bankruptcy, because in those states, the homestead exemption is there's no cap on it, right? So homestead exemption, motor vehicle exemption, cash, retirement. You can have $1 million in your 401k and still claim bankruptcy. People don't understand that that's how it works, right? So just, keep an open mind, and know that that's an option. If none of these shenanigans with the government and the public service and Parent Plus and all of that is just driving you nuts and making you think like there's never an end, then, call me up. I'll
Yeah, and we need I was hoping you had that on a slide, your contact information, because people were like,
yes, I do. Well, you can reach me at this is my work and I'm trying to.
Oh, okay. Well, no, don't do that. Let me.
You can reach out to me there too. That's fine. Let me just share that slide.
Let me do how you want it, separate from work. I always like to separate contact information from work.
Right. Okay. Well, if anybody
put it on the video
right now, my IG it's Slay Student Loan Debt or slaystudentloandebt.com. I could even put it in the chat as well.
Okay, and I'm putting it here, slaystudentloandebt.com. So,
and then on Instagram, it's Slay Student Loan Debt as well.
Perfect. If you're on the email list, I'm getting all of her contact information that she wants me to give you. So I'll send that out tomorrow. I'll then update this video. Someone asked me if I was going to take it down. No, I'm not. So this is going to be on here for you, including the little beginner bloopers. So just excuse me for that, okay? Listen, you guys know I am trying to get back on this social media thing after years of just doing Zoom and webinar jams. So we're going to make it do what it do. We're going to make it do what it do. It's going to stay up. I'll update the description on this video when she gives it to me as well. And then for those of you who are wealth creators, the replay, her contact information, all of that is going to be in. Hopefully you'll come back into our wealth creators community. We would love to have you. Doors are going to be opening December, whatever that first Monday is of December. So we're planning out the entire year. So we would love to have you back. I would also love to do a joint webinar with you as well. Even though you are not, you're with legal aid, which I think is wonderful. Legal aid used to help my clients out so much with free legal assistance. If you, do a class or anything like that, we can definitely do a joint webinar together. Just to give this knowledge to the people who need it, because
I can do all the teaching and consulting work in the world, as long as I have time, because my caseload is pretty full. That's why I'm still in the office. I was like, I'm not gonna make it home, so I might as well stay here and do this webinar with you. But yeah, I would love to collaborate on workshops, webinars, whatever it is to spread the word, get the word out, because student loans are confusing. People are just coming out of this slumber of this little fantasy bubble we've been in for 3.5 years with no payments. So there's a lot of confusion. People need the information. People need to be educated and just, given some guidance on that as well. So
absolutely. And so Natasha, for your question, if you filed previously, you have to refile. So it's not like they're going to reapply it to a bankruptcy that was already discharged.
Oh, no. We can reopen bankruptcy cases.
Are you serious?
Yes. Oh my God. So
Natasha, I'm so glad you asked that then. Look, this is the first time I love being wrong. So let me know how this works.
Yes. So I have a lot of clients who discover me way after some other attorney did their bankruptcy, told them they can't get rid of the student loans. They found me on the internet or whatever. And they're like, can you help me? You just need to file what they call a motion to reopen. So you can reopen a bankruptcy case for any reason. And there's no time limit on it. You reopen.
Another student loan attorney told me something completely different. So I am so glad you told me this.
Right. So you can reopen an old case to litigate student loan debt. And I have never filed a motion to reopen that got denied. Every motion to reopen that I filed has been approved. Right. And I'm talking about cases that are as old as 10 years old, 10-year-old cases. Right. But keep in mind that it's the discharge of the student loan debt is going to be based on your current income and expenses, not what they were when you actually filed, right? So whatever your current income and expenses are, your current situation, if you have a student loan case, then you can reopen it. One thing I do want to warn you about is that the new DOJ guidance only applies to cases that were pending as of November of 2022. It doesn't mean you don't qualify for discharge. It just means that the new guidance that makes it like piece of cake is only going to apply to cases that were pending as of November 17th of 2022. But I've been reopening cases. That's what I've been doing, right? Because people were like, well, I went through a bankruptcy and I'm still stuck with my student loans. What can I do? So.
Yeah, I mean, so in my opinion, medical debt, student loans, IRS debt, if you can't pay it, you can't pay it. Stop trying to like ruin people's lives and prevent them from at least having some type of peace of mind, financial peace of mind, and exhale and being able to live some type of lifestyle from this overwhelming amount of debt. It's ridiculous. So I love, Natasha, that you asked me that, because I literally had another person on probably about 2 years ago who told me no. So okay, now we have, Attorney Natalie was like, I do this in my sleep, okay, all day. So
exactly, all day, every day. Okay,
love it, love it, love it. And by the way, she is has bankruptcy expertise, that she has already said as well. So we are going to be anxious for this information. So I will definitely be putting it on here for you guys to see, both on YouTube, inside of the Facebook group, as well as tomorrow's email. If you're not on the email list, go to frugalmail.thefrugalcreditinista.com. And of course, Wealth Creators, you guys. So you guys get everything. So you're all good. And I did get 2 people to ask me about a form. It says you mentioned a form to submit to student loan for a student loan discharge. Is that via bankruptcy, or can this be done with just the form?
Oh, no, it's through bankruptcy. So under the new DOJ guidance, for discharging student loan debt, the process makes it a lot easier. And if you want to learn more, just Google it. Just say new guidance on discharge of student loans in bankruptcy. But it's an attestate. It's what they call the attestation form. It's a 15-page form, just basically going over your income, your household size, your student loan debt, your expenses, your budget, things like that. But that is through the bankruptcy process, not just like, a random discharge, right? There are other ways to get rid of student loans, like disability discharge, borrower defense to repayment if you are defrauded by your school, if your school closed. There are various avenues, but if you don't fall into any of those categories, bankruptcy may be worth, looking into.
I love it. And Dr. said for Latoya, since you're still in school, you can at least pay the interest on your unsubsidized loans, because they start capitalizing, basically accruing, as soon as you withdraw. And that is very true. So you can definitely do that if you're able to. So thank you for that, Dr. Seb. All right, I think I got everybody. Woo woo. All right, so.
All right.
I am so appreciative, and thank you for joining us today. I mean, listen, you and I both have mentioned we've been off of social media for a while. I have been doing webinars like crazy for a while, especially with my wealth creators. So I'm excited to be back with my partners on both YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And I'm excited to have you with me as well. Our next one will be on Side Hustles. That's going to be on the 28th, a Saturday. So definitely make sure that you tune in for that. We will definitely be having you back, Attorney Natalie. And I can't wait to get your information, because so many people are like, yes. So, I mean, you may have a pretty busy side hustle alongside your.
Right. Oh, and I also want to let you all know, I will be launching a course after the new year on how to discharge student loans in bankruptcy. So literally walking you through the process. And I always tell people, if I can do it, you can do it. Because I was just a girl who wanted to party with rock stars. And I was able to do what seasoned bankruptcy attorneys could not do. As this new girl who's like, I'm going to get rid of my student loans. What? Like, it's hard, and I get rid of 120K. So I know that I know how to teach people how to do this. I've been doing it for 10 years in private practice. I know that, and I've been teaching other lawyers how to do it. So my course is going to be launching after the new year. If you follow me on social, if you go to my website,
we'll
you're going to get the updates. Yeah.
Yeah. So that way you didn't have to worry about an update. I'll just bring you back on.
Yeah.
The launch, and then that way they don't have to be stalking you and possibly miss it. I will be announcing it in your emails and in the group. And we'll probably do like a quick, like half hour or so Q&A, just to kind of let them know what the class is going to be about. And then we're all good from there.
All right.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Of course, my wealth creators, if you have any questions, definitely let me know. And your patience. Okay. Listen, I am trying to get this Zoom connection. It is like giving me the blues. So I appreciate you guys' patience. I'm going to practice this before the 28th. So I'll send out like an email and a little quick blurb in the group to like meet me so that I can practice this, so I can make sure we're on point for the 28th. So I can see what went wrong this time. But always Zoom, you know, we always are smooth sailing inside of the Zoom room.
Yeah, Zoom is my favorite. Never a hiccup there. And I love IG Live as well. IG Live is my jam. So
no, I don't like going live on my phone. I could never get the stuff working like a working. Like right now, the lights are popping. Okay,
right.
The computer, the phone, I never know. And then you know, I live in Mexico, so sometimes like I'm hardwired in on a computer, but the phone, you never know what kind of connection is going to go
what could go wrong.
So I'm always like. So I so appreciate you guys and your patience. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight and blessing us with all of your knowledge. I can't wait to have you back. I know this class is going to be lit. Like, I am so excited for it. And we'll definitely have you back when you get ready to launch it.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. All right.
You're very welcome. Enjoy your evening. Bye, partners.